How you doing? I'm 10 Commandments and watch. I'm going to share my experiences through life. I hope it brings honor to Jehovah. There was a main theme. It's experiencing that voice, the things I'm seeing with my eyes as I go back over my life and remember, over a long period of time, I was convicted in my heart, in my stomach, to obey. And so this journey, you'll want to listen if you are going to sit through this, and you being like me. So this is for the lost sheep. So I'm just gonna get right to it. I got a cup of coffee here. So yeah, honor to the name of Jehovah, and thanks. And so here we go. I was 10 in probably 1979. I was born in 68, but I was introduced at a Southern Baptist church to the idea of a king coming back with all his angels, and he was pissed. And if you've been to Southern Baptists in the 80s, you'll know their platforms were like 3 foot tall, and I'm a kid, and I'm seeing this guy, and his fingers like the size of a 50-cent piece, and I'm running around in his sanctuary, and he's like, "Do you believe?" And yeah, I did. He was describing a superhero though, and I'd already experienced every type of abuse that a kid could experience by the time he was 10. I was like tripping on adults do some messed up stuff, and yeah. Anyway, I believed, and time flies, so it's not long until you're 15, and the doctrine, or the demonic doctrine, the lies. Over time, they were sown into my heart, but I was able to see. And so I want to make a statement that telling someone that they're saved, and just the ed on the end of the sentence, saved, it's past tense. There's no requirement to do anything else. You're in the club. You can go to the potlucks. You know, you might want to look like others and just be a cookie cutter Christian and get a third day CD and all that. But it like killed me, and at the same time, I learned to wreak havoc and destruction on society. And so I went probably first into fighting. I remember 15-ish, sixth grade, whatever. Two twin brothers and their cousin, like, "Here's the guy we're looking for," and I grew about a foot between the fifth and sixth grade, and they didn't know as soon as they swung on me that I'd been getting abused, and so I was all built up with rage, and I earned their respect though, because I kicked the shit out of all three of them, and yeah. Me and another one ran into the same bathroom, and he was bleeding in the sink while I went over to the urinal, and the principal came in, and he's like, "Nah, I bumped my lip," and I found out they just like to fight, and I did too after that point. And incidentally, the idea of a lawless life and hanging out with these guys was going to be my future. I didn't realize some of the things I've discovered as an adult. I was seeking acceptance. If I dropped back into the fifth grade, I'd been taking Ritalin for probably close to 10 years, somewhere in 5, 6, maybe 7, 3 times a day. I ate a couple pills, and I really felt rejected. No father, rejected, just wanted acceptance, and I found my peer group, and they were on the corner smoking weed and cigarettes, and into rebellion. And of course, that's what we're being taught, from the Southern Baptist Church. There's lawlessness. So this progressed. It progressed. My behaviors. I had no desire to, no rules. I started to experience things, and as a result of that, I went to juvenile hall, mental health, group homes, and when you come back home and you ran away and you're out there, stealing ham and cheese. I don't eat ham anymore, but, I was a ham and cheese bandit in the paper. That was when I first went to jail. I was stealing out there and just, trying to survive. And over a period of time, I did a couple of jail terms. I went to prison, did probations, I did parole, 2 terms in prison, 5 violations. It led me up to just about to turn 30. And, this is 20 years, and I'm thinking I'm going to heaven. But the thing about this voice that I kept hearing, I needed to make some changes, and I knew. I thought my problem was always being on parole, and then all of a sudden I was off parole, and I was going down the road, and it was probably the year 1999 or so. I probably got parole in 97, 98, and so I had a pretty long run, and it was pretty hard out there on me. And of course, I'm being violent in the community, and in 99 I only had a few things on my bucket list. And when you're living that life, you're like, yeah, I want 2 girls at the same time, stuff like that. And then when these things happened, Jehovah showed up. I didn't seek him out. I mean, I always had wanted it, but it was unfulfilling. It was like gross. It was like, oh, wow. Because some stuff had been laid out in me, and can't say you don't know if you read this book cover to cover. And that's what I did. Every time I went back into prison, my mom made sure she got that Bible in there with me. And she'd come down, drop it off, and I'd take it and read it. It was a Thompson chain, and I just kind of have a little journey. And so in 99, though, I went by that church on 8th Street. And I had heroin, meth, weed, tobacco, both types. I smoked non-filters, and I chewed tobacco, and I had cash in my pocket. And I knew when I usually had a fat score, I went and chilled somewhere with one of these gals I knew. And I knew they were in my rear. I was going the other direction, and I was going by the church on my left. And I don't know who spoke first, but I know I told the Father, I said, I can't live like this. I told him everything that was in my pocket. I told him, I was unfulfilled. There's a key. This is the key. Being sincere and talking directly to him. I'm not talking incense or robes or being face down. I'm talking riding a bike. I just told him. And I'd had some prayers prior to that. I'd been violent. I told him, hey, that wasn't my knife. That was their knife, and I didn't tell anybody anything. And like they were trying to offer me 8 years and it was 80%. And I prayed. I'm like, you're sovereign. You speak through kings and judges. You know it was self-defense, and he's not dead, but he was in intensive care for like a week. I prayed. I prayed the word that I knew. It was like, you can talk right through this, Judge. I wanted him to decide my future. I uh, I prayed that, and it wasn't like I was praying to him to be Santa Claus. I just bared my heart before him, and the witness against me went to like Alabama or Arkansas or something until after all this went by, and I demanded a new trial, and because he didn't show up, and they were like, "Well, if you just plead guilty to a misdemeanor, we'll let you out of jail." And I was just always looking up like, "Whoa." I pled guilty when I was guilty, but I pled my case before him, and so I was having conversations through this long time, this 20 years span, and he was moving in my behalf, and so I prayed in front of the church. I was like, I can't live like this anymore. And next thing I know, I'm in a drug program, and it's a 6-month program, but they caught me with a bandana full of bullets and 357 shells, and they said, yeah, well, this isn't drug related, but in the interest of justice. And I'm like, I know he's sovereign. He can do what he needs to do when he needs to do it. But I had prayed, and he wanted me to go in there and load and unload trucks in a reception center for the Salvation Army. And I started seeing things, though, along the way. Inside of a Christian program, I saw the merchandising. I saw the Bibles getting thrown away, sold for paperweight. I saw them making videos of, a reformed drug addict, fixing bicycles or small engines, and it's like they were throwing, anything metal that was goofed up a little bit. They weren't fixing nothing. They were throwing it in the metal bins, and they were putting clothes in cardboard baling machines and tying them with twine and just sending them out. And they shred that stuff up and use it for pillows and stuff like that. And I was just like, whoa. You never know, because the stores are always full of stuff too. But yeah, people are just giving their stuff away and they don't even see it. And that's the essence of exposing darkness. After that program, though, I learned to work. And I went to this tire company, and I was loading trucks there for money. Cool. And I got my own place. And eventually, after being clean for two and a half years, I went home to see Mom, and my Trans Am I bought for $1,500. It's just like, I was excited. I was passionate about the idea that I finally had a vehicle and a driver's license. I didn't get one till after 30, and I went to see my mom and spend the weekend. Get off work on Friday and shoot up to Mom's. And I went to a friend's house, a couple of friends, and barbecued with them, stayed the night. And when he threw me a pillow and a blanket, he threw me a black book. That's when I got to see who he really was. I mean, I came into his door telling him the Most High broke the yokes, and I wasn't duly addicted to heroin and meth anymore, and I didn't know behind that smile that he was a servant of Satan. And he threw me that book, and I sat up and started reading it, and I realized what was going on. It was the invitation to the dark side, the other side of the coin. And having read this book first, I'm just so thankful, because what was described in there was lawless on the next level. And if I wanted to tell you anything about the kingdom of darkness, if you're lost out there, they just may know more about the necessity to keep Jehovah's covenants than you do. They hate him. and they desecrate and violate every commandment. And attack you and destroy your families and your lives. You in the, in the position where you're not keeping covenant, you're just food for them. It hurts to know this, the blood, the semen, they even piss and shit. They'll just, it's debauchery. But they're at war with God, and they're at war with his children. And once I read that book for about 75 pages, I saw this person different. And I always thought that hole behind his shed in the ground was to hide from the police. He showed it to me, but it was because he was in an underground as a servant of Satan, and it was probably the last stop for people that had been abducted. It was cut just square like a grave, and I went from being naive and seeing these things, and I'm just like, I want to expose it. You have to keep the commandments. You do. You're called to. You don't have to do anything, but I do. I have to tell you because you've been lied to. You're not saved. You have to endure to the end. I have to endure. But you have to endure sound doctrine. If you've been under the covering of demonic doctrines, from top to bottom, all 45,000, 50,000 denominations. It's been 10 years or more than 10 years, 2013, 14, for me. And I did not realize till I came to Straight as a Gate here recently, but I've been praying, where am I at on these commandments with you, Father? Is there any graven images? And he showed me more. I would respond to him in obedience. I mean, what do you do when you ask him and you expect to see and you hope to see and you want to be obedient and you want to show your love for the Father, and he wakes you up at 1:30 in the morning? You take that gold ring that's a lion with a crown on his head, and it's just accept what Yeshua is saying in your heart. He's saying, that's not me. And then I realized what a piece of shit, I've been in the damages I've done, just even in the recent past where I was trying to keep covenant without assembling on the Sabbath with a group. Probably getting ahead of myself. The things that transpired in my life after seeing that were a couple more relapses, and went into a Christian life school, a crisis center. I went down to the Riverside Castle with Teen Challenge Ministries. I was in there for about 2.5 years, and I went through it all and went through Old Testament survey, and they didn't say one thing about the tree. They're just like idol worship, These numbers that I'm hearing today, the 390 years and the teachings at Straight as the Gate, and and the Southern Kingdom went like 130 more years. They get taken out by the Babylonians, and the whole thing hinges on the worship of the Christmas tree. I mean, if you've seen Straight as the Gate videos, they're showing you it goes back to Nimrod. If you have any experience with this book, the Tower of Babel went down, and Nimrod was in the beginning after the flood. He showed us pictures of his statue. He's got a reindeer in one arm and a evergreen bough in the other. It's been a heathen practice forever. There's no way around it. I don't care what our forefathers taught us. You're hearing the truth. We don't bow down, but yeah, they taught us that stuff there. They taught us. I went to their ministry school. I went through an internship. And I watched them merchandise people. I watched them put up circus tents. I helped them do that. And they brought in like tables enough for 300 people. And they would turn the meat on the spit on their machine, their barbecue machine. And they bring them in. They just put buckets on the table, popcorn bucket type. They were fleecing people. There was just, it was such an industry they've created down in Southern California where they're bringing in like 20 million a year. They're doing like 2 weddings a day inside that castle. Down there, people come and they want to pull up in a little roundabout and be valet parked by some recovering addict in a bow tie. And they're eating chicken cordon bleu in there, and it's a qualified 4 or 5 star kitchen, and there's 90 guys, and you have to have food stamps to be in there. How about that? That's money laundering 101. Once you've been in a level 4 prison and you've seen how 3 guys sift out one guy's bank account, and one guy that you think is your friend across the table from you is just, he's a con. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. They're running a con on you when they pull up with a van full of recovering addicts, and they tell their testimony, and they sing in a choir, and everybody's just pulling out the handkerchiefs, and you're being fleeced. Your harvest emotions are being reduced down to cash, and they're fat, $20 million, but I don't want to spend too much time there if you can't see that on your own. So I was convicted as I'd see these things. I'm like, this ain't it. And so it's no surprise after a couple more programs and seeing the things I saw that I saw women teaching, they're setting up Christmas trees in their church, and I don't know, the last 9 years it's just been not knowing where to go and wanting to keep his commandments. And so I don't know, 5 years ago I went from one job to another. It's been a little over 5 years now. And I told him I couldn't work on Saturdays, but I've been just sitting in the chair in the other room. And for a couple of years, I was going to chair meeting and AA, 12 steps. And I really just was convicted to have conversations with people that said they wanted someone to guide them and sponsor them. And under the, it's a demonic doctrine too. They want to turn their lives over to the care and will of God. And I'm like, are you kidding? You're going to hold hands and pray the Lord's Prayer, and you're not going to say his name, and you're just going to say you can have a God of your own understanding. I was like, they got that shit going on in India. Everybody's got a different statue. And I just couldn't understand. I would ask people why they wanted to get sober in the first place. They could still just commit adultery and not decide what was moral and right. And so I got to experience here in the recent past people just hating you for, having an honest conversation. And it was probably 2 summers ago that they had the hog roast, the annual hog roast. And I went. I didn't go always, but I went and asked if they needed any help. They said, no, we got it. And a few minutes later, they're hey, we need you. And they're already calling people to be served. They're going through 300 people going through like 2 lines, and they hand me a pair of tongs and gloves, and I got 2.5 trays of pulled pork, and I was like, oh, my bad. I'm talking to the father. I'm like, look, I haven't eaten this in forever. Probably, I would guess about 9 years. I don't want to go any further than 10, but I've known. And once you know, you can't unknow. You can't say you don't know. You're obligated to respond. And that's another key. When you're obedient to what's shown to you, if you see the movie, or you read the book, and another key, one, respond in obedience, and you'll get to see more. But there's keys to this. There's keys to this. Uh, I'm looking at this pork, and I'm like, my bad. I don't know how. Never did, and eventually, I'm sure he was just delighted in my heart. And I saw people just going through the line, give me more, like, look, dude. All I knew is I had 150 people coming, and I had to do some quick math and like come through again, and they just, I don't know, I'm just blind to the truth, and just, they just wanted a pile of that stuff, and I was just like, yeah, this stuff's an abomination, and it's all bad, read Isaiah, the end of the book, and anyway, he told me these aren't your people. And so I went to that meeting I chaired every Saturday. I thought that was my Sabbath. And I was just trying to reach people and ask them, hey, what about Jehovah? I was saying Yeshua mostly. I at that time thought his name was Yahweh. And I found out through the group it's actually Jehovah. And so I'm thankful to be corrected, though. And I found out they weren't my people at that time, and I can't remember. I don't know what time of the year Tabernacles is, but around about the same time I went to, that's the far left we're talking about, the church, and then the far right side of the road, I know it was real easy to be shown that narrow road's right down the middle, and it's like, I'm a truck driver and I can get it, keep it on the road, stay out of the ditch. It's your whole goal when you're going 45 miles an hour and it's snowing and you got your lights blinking. You're like, keep it out of the ditch. And that's what this is about, getting on the straight and narrow gate, because there's only one way. It's to be grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel. It's not for anybody else. It's for Israel. So I went over and I tabernacled. I ate on a Saturday with them, and then they set up the tent and stuff, and I took a picture, and I did the final Saturday. I sat down and we had stuff in crock pots. There was no lamb or nothing, and I took a selfie. It's in my phone. It's more like a backpacker would when he was going across Europe or something. It's like, okay, been here, done this. This ain't it, And so it was at the end of October. I prayed to the Father. I was sitting in my chair out there, and I'm like, this ain't it. We've had that conversation before, and I was convicted in there's more, and I told him, yeah, I know there's more. And he's been working with me, because we're talking about being complacent, but as soon as I asked him who my people were, he reminded me I'd seen a couple Straight as a Gate videos, and I interacted, and I was like, this girl was talking, and she was doing so good. I was like, man, I hear what you're saying, and then she got to, my personal self-righteous bullshit, being taught all my life that drunkenness was sin and coming out of recovery. I suppose Jehovah wanted to work this out first, in his brilliance, and that's what I embraced in the beginning. Anyways, I was invited to come to the Zoom and get on the Zoom, and I got on the Zoom and I Sabbathed, and I felt so good about doing so. I got to tell you, though, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was just sitting in this chair, and I felt like I ate a turkey, and I don't know what I remembered after that. And they were going through the meat and juice season, and I realized They're literally feasting over here on ham on the left side. We're in the season for Christmas, and over here, they still think, the Torah community is still thinking, they're going to keep the feasts and stuff. But right here, we get meat in due season in a spiritual form, and I suppose I'm going to just overview what I kind of learned in the last month, because I've had November's had 5 Sabbaths in it. I interacted, and I came in here and I learned that I've been reading this in the natural with the natural eye, because of course you have to be obedient to be given the Spirit, the eyes to see. You have to have the conviction, and you have to make the choice to be obedient, and then you're given more. But one thing that was just amazing, I discovered, I couldn't keep up. They were talking about the meat, and I'm like, what are they? I was like, these guys sound like coders on a video game or something. It's just like they're just, these young men are just intelligent. Just, it's the Spirit, and I know it is. And they're talking about Ephraim and Manasseh, and I'm like, what's going on? And I found out there's idioms. The Bible is coded with idioms, and you have to know what they mean, and it means you have to read it line upon line. And so, like Ephraim, it's all bad for them. That's the USA. In case you didn't know, we're in there. I'm right in the middle, in Nebraska, and Manasseh's the UK. But briars and thorns are covetous people, and I already told you, drunkards. They've always been prideful people. Liken them to how a drunkard walks, but that's the beauty of it. It's not to be taken literal, it's spiritual. And so it's a brand new walk for me. I actually have a brand new Bible, and four different colors, and I'm trying to keep up. Anytime it says the knowledge of Yah, it's talking about the 10 Commandments. Grace is conviction in the heart, And that's what I hope you heard in this message. I would always see, and I can tell you by experience, and when it says Jeremiah 23, and the sheep are scattered, I know why. I lived it. Get tired of their bullshit. Also learn profanity. And we're season our message. We want to prophesy or speak plainly, but we also want to season it with salt. And there's going to be times when I'm going to rebuke people that, these are fables. They're fucking fables, people. I mean, Santa is not going to go down your chimney, and don't you remember the first time you were told this stuff? I mean, there was something going on inside. I don't believe this guy can go down or fly on a reindeer. They're fables. And when you rebuke fables, it's because, these vain imaginations that were passed on to people, and they're parodying, and I'm just, my hope is to just share this and be like, hey, reconnoiter here, examine the truth, and pray about it, and make right decisions. And if there's anything that should be a sign, it's only going to be a small group. It's going to be a small group. It's always a small group. And when you look at the size of the Christian church, that ought to be a clue. That ought to be a clue. And the behaviors. So I think I've probably come about to the end of what I wanted to share. I have a hope that my sins are just blotted out, and my iniquities aren't remembered, because truthfully, I should be in prison doing life, living that lawless life. I wreaked havoc and destruction on society. caused a lot of harm then and recent. Coming here, I found out praying the Ten Commandments, how self-righteous I've been, and I've had to just totally look at what it's asking me to do. It's asking me to come out from the cover of these false teachings, and clear all these books out. They're gone, and get rid of any idols and just respond and respond and respond. And, at the same time, clean up my heart and my life, and renounce the past, and renounce the ideas and ideologies that have been, as I go through and become sanctified in this. And that's what you're called to do. You're called to discover. I'll give you an example. I'm a hard worker, man. I go to work on Monday morning, and I get back on Friday. I work a truck driving job, and I always told myself was working, because if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat, which is a clear example of how one can interpret with the natural eye and the natural ear something that's spiritual. And I was just like, man, yeah, if you need food stamps to get on your feet, yeah, but I'm like, you need to have a job, and you need to be working, and I always thought that way until I heard the truth. And it's just like, I'm going to the Sabbath now to eat meat off the table, and bread off the table, and milk off the table, to grow strong. And it's to work for the Father. That's why it's 10 Commandment watch. It's to watch for you. It's to go out and rebuke my neighbor, and that's what I'm being strengthened on the inside for. Yeah, it had a spiritual meaning. A man doesn't, work to eat in a physical sense. Yeah, we do. Put bread on the table, but to bring you the bread and the living water, I have to dedicate my life and my heart, and understand that it is the royal law, and it is the very definition of love. For me to be obedient to the Father, Jehovah, and express my love to Him, I have to not only keep these commandments and eat clean, I have to communicate to you. That's the only reason I got on here. I don't want to be on a video sharing my experience unless it's going to bring people to repentance. And I hope if you've seen anything in this video, you've seen me throughout life embrace conviction. I don't know what I learned first. I learned in the internet. Is, go look at straightasthegate.net. The internet is full of pork. Christmas. And I don't know when probably pork and the name of Yeshua was first. But after reading that other book and knowing the commandments was just like a thing, and then my little brother came along and told me, I think there's something there, and I started looking, and he's right. He's right. But none of it means anything unless you're going to do, a full dedicated life to Jehovah. I mean, I guess what I really want to say is if you offend in one of these 10 Commandment laws, you offend in all of them. If you're not assembling, and you're not speaking often to one another, then you're in violation. I can't just not eat pork and not celebrate Christmas and not commit adultery. I have to also assemble and examine my heart and my life. If there's any covetousness and any idolatry, all these things are necessary to just, this is where He wants to live. He's like, clean up that vessel so I can live inside there. He doesn't want me connected to any woman that I'm not married to, or inviting lust in my heart in any kind any kind of way. Um, I forgot I had a coffee. He wants to live here in your heart. Um, so that's what I'm striving for. I'm just a baby brother in a house. It's full house, and um, if this does anything, it's just to point you to straysagate.net. I've only been um, striving to ensure that I'm keeping covenant and I'm being guided by elders. And yeah, if I close this out, anything is just over a month ago. I was sitting in a chair and told the Father, where my people are, and now I got WhatsApp on my phone, and I got a bunch of men that, if I didn't call one of them would call me at this point. It's just, and it's been exciting to share where I'm at, you know, and have them guide me forward, and question me and ask me to ask questions myself. And yeah, I suppose I'm done. I just wanted to share my experience with you. I hope it gives you hope. I want you to ask yourself if you've had a voice talking to you, and now you've been doing all that, and that's between you and the Father. If you've been convicted, you're not, kick it into gear, bro. There's more. And I want to point out your ability to see is going to be directly proportionate to how you respond. Um, and it's like bailing water. You want your boat to float, and get rid of what you need to get rid of when you need to get rid of it. So yeah, and if this hits you at all, you may be one of the lost sheep. Translation, if you've called bullshit, if you've left, the Christian church, if you've heard stuff like, come out of her, my people, and had a little ring in your ear, that's because it's what you're called to do. You're supposed to come out of the whore, Babylon. She's drinking a cup, and you don't want no part of that. That's what you're being called out of. You're being called out of not only a military, political entity, that has so much power and influence and dominion over the world. It's also that religious aspect, and it's easy to see that the Catholic Church fits this, but I have to tell you, from the time that it was nailed to the door there, like the guy's name, 500 years ago, he's like, yeah, the just shall live by faith, and everybody split off, and they got all these denominations. They're described as the daughters of that whore, and that would be the church. So you're called to come out of that. That you don't partake in her. She's going to be destroyed. You don't want no part of that. And so the correct way to respond to this is with obedience. You hear the call and you come out, and hopefully you'll want to wash your garments, because there's consequences. These are eternal decisions you're making right now. So thank you for letting me share with you.